Hey there, I'm Robbie Carman, and welcome to this special insight where we're joined with our good friend from Flanders Scientific, Bram Desmet. Bram, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And Bram is here because he's brought something kind of nifty up here to my studio. This is the brand new, about to be released into the wild, XM650U. This is a 65-inch professional OLED display.
Yep.
Bram, you got to be pretty stoked about this monitor.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's something people have been asking us about since, well, you know how long.
Well, I've been asking him about for a very long time. No, just to give you some background. I have been using LG OLEDs pretty much since the day they've come out, and as Bram and Patrick and Dan also know, I buy one every time the new one comes out, right? Because I'm constantly on this like search of perfection, which Bram has reminded me many times. There is no such thing, Rob. Calm down. It will eventually be better, but not perfect. And, you know, it's funny because we've been talking about this obviously for a long time, and, you know, you've been researching this market and that kind of stuff. Why now? Why'd you guys decide to get into a 65-inch version of this display?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that we thought were critical in terms of the display being what we would consider linear enough and performing within the type of benchmarks that we would expect out of a professional level display.
Sure.
Certainly people have been using consumer OLEDs as client displays, and we think that, you know, that works. That's one of the reasons that we marketed kind of our LUT boxes for that market, to be used with those displays to help calibrate them. But, you know, certainly having access to good panels was a challenge. There was a limited supply of them. Cost used to be very prohibitive on these in terms of supply,
$10,000 plus, right?
Exactly, sourcing the panels. And then again, the performance benchmarks, especially things like linearity and you know, loading behavior, kind of like the plasmas.
I mean, I've experienced all. I mean, you've explained them to me in detail, you know, in phone calls and emails. But I've experienced all of these things. I'm like, Bram, why? And he's like, just because. That's what it does. You know.
Exactly. So there are certain limitations. I mean, there are still challenges with this technology for sure, and we're not saying that all those challenges have been solved. But we're at a point now where we think it's good enough to be used in a professional level product with the professional CMS built in and with the professional connectivity built in as well, the 12 gigabit a second SDI inputs and all of that.
Well, let's talk about a few of those things. So first of all, obviously this is a 65-inch display, right? So 65 is going to fit in a lot of rooms really big. It's bigger. It's actually noticeably bigger when you look at a 65 versus a 50 or a 55. It's like, whoa, that's really big, right? Yeah. That's great for room filling, and clients like that. This is an SDR capable monitor, of course, but also an HDR capable monitor. Now, you guys are marketing this as sort of not necessarily an HDR mastering monitor.
Exactly.
You have monitors that you call HDR preview monitors, which are some of your smaller ones. What are you calling this one?
HDR monitoring. So we have three levels that we have in our line. HDR preview, which is basically quick and dirty on set, roughly normalize the footage. HDR monitoring, which we think is good enough for client viewing of HDR, good enough for some of kind of the lower caliber HDR deliveries. If you're doing like an HDR 10 or just basic HLG monitoring, something like that, you can certainly use. We probably wouldn't try to promote this for use as a Dolby Vision mastering monitor because it's not quite bright enough. It doesn't meet those minimum benchmarks. But we still think that for a lot of HDR applications, it's more than suitable. For SDR, that's one important thing is we do think this is suitable as your primary master monitor. So if you want to use this to
single monitor in the room.
Single monitor in the room for your SDR projects, you can do that. If you want to use this as your single monitor in the room for your HDR projects that are basically everything short of Dolby Vision, you can do that. If you're doing Dolby Vision mastering, then this may be good as a client monitor, but not as your primary reference.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a really smart play, especially, you know, all the things that we've talked about, and we'll talk about while we have you here today, talk about some of these other things in terms of you know, metarism failure, which I always say wrong, which is metamerism failure, and things of that nature. Having a single display in the room obviously has a lot of advantages to get rid of display matching and stuff like that. So I think that's a good play. And you know, the truth is that even though HDR is really emerging, I'm starting to do a lot more of it. Still, 90% of the work that I do is SDR. And I'm trying to get in these things. So I think this is a really smart play for a lot of people who are like, okay, I want to future-proof myself a little bit,
Yeah.
have this single display in the room that's perfect for SDR, and I can still dabble in HDR work while as the technology grows and the standards change and all that kind of stuff. So
Exactly, and without going to something that's very
$50,000 or whatever.
very
Exactly,
cost
right.
prohibitive.
So 65 inch, as we said. Let's talk connectivity for a second.
Yeah.
You guys, this is the first monitor you have with 12G connectivity on it, right?
Correct.
And there's a lot of 12G connectors on this thing, right?
There are.
So you have 4 in and outs.
Correct.
And each one of those 4 in and outs also has a clean output, correct?
Yeah, so what you have is you have 4 12G capable inputs. Right. You have 4 clean outputs, which the signal's not manipulated at all. And then we have 4 what we call monitor outputs, similar to our DM series monitor, that let you do things to the signal.
Oh, so if you have a DIT LUT applied on it,
you could do a LUT downstream. That might be one example. I think a real powerful example of where it would be useful for people in a post-production setting is that you can actually do an HD downscaled. So it has a down converter built in. So, and why would you want this? Well, let's say you're a facility that's just getting into 4K or UHD workflows, and you have HD standalone scopes.
So we have DisplayPort in as well. So if you needed to pipe something that was coming in DisplayPort or converted from HDMI or something like that as well. Your standard audio in and outs, right? So that's you're gonna be able to pick in the monitor system, pick which channels of the SDI stream you're gonna be monitoring, right?
Exactly.
What else we got in there? We have Ethernet connectivity, right?
Ethernet connectivity for control. I think also on the SDI connectors, it's important to note that while we do have 12G capability, the monitor
multi-rate, right?
They'll obviously do 6G, but they'll also do quad 3 because there's a lot of legacy quad 3 out there.
And as I've written about recently in a couple of my articles on Dolby Vision, Quad 3G, routing that around is a total pain in the butt, and converting it to 6G, 12G. So it's nice that I can pipe it right into the monitor.
You can do all that, and the other beautiful thing about the Quad 3D or Quad 3G or Quad 1.5 capability built into the monitors, you can use that for UHD and 4K, but you could also use it for 4 HD signals.
Oh, right. So I could get 4 separate HD signals going into the monitor, right?
Onto one monitor, and that's more of like the kind of the video village type application more than it is the post-production application. But it is possible to do that on this display, and I think some people will find functionality in that. Okay,
let's talk a couple other things. In terms of weight, what are we looking at for weight for this?
I think it's about 60 pounds. Okay. I need to get it out of this case and onto a scale, but it's about 60 pounds.
I'm sure you can see this, but Bram came today with this gigantic road case that you'll see at a trade show or event near you pretty soon. It's pretty cool. We'll show you some B-roll of it in a minute where we can kind of lift this in and out. Cool case, Bram. A great way to get this thing around. But I would not recommend lifting it. It's pretty darn heavy.
It's heavy, yeah.
So 6 pounds can be VESA mounted as well, correct?
So it's got a 300 by 200 mounting pattern on it. Most wall mounts will work. Something to take note of on this panel and also most of the large format OLEDs you'll find out there is that the mounting is low on the monitor, not centered. So just keep that in mind when you're designing your room, that your wall mount's going to sit a little bit differently.
And actually, one nice feature I noticed about the SDI connectivity is that it's recessed, right? So if you are going to get it nice and close to a wall, you have that little bit of extra room.
Exactly. So it's actually inlaid into the monitor, helps protect the connectors, and you can use little right angle connectors if you want, but it takes up a minimal amount of room that way.
Now, this is going to sound like a little bit of a funny thing to really like, but the fact that you guys put the monitor controls on the front of the monitor, bottom of the monitor, really big fan. I've gone into a lot of facilities that had your previous 50-inch series, where the controls were on the top, and everybody's like, where's the control? Where's the control?
So we were asked for that for control room applications because people didn't want to see buttons, didn't want people messing with them. So that's why we ended up with that, because that wasn't really meant as a post-production monitor so much. It was more of a video wall or a control room type setup, right?
Yeah.
But these, we realize that people are going to want easy access. So we have the buttons on the front, nice and easy to access the different functionality there. They can also be controlled over an IP connection. So you can actually...
With your monitor utility.
So you can use the monitor utility, you can remote control everything there. You can load LUTs from there, you can turn LUTs on and off, and you can also access scope stream. So you can actually see your waveform and vector scope.
To another computer screen. Now, obviously one of the things that people have come to trust FSI about is your calibration abilities, right?
Yep.
You guys are well known throughout the industry that, hey, we ship you something that we test out and we do all the test work. It's calibrated when you get it.
Yep.
You've also offered over the years the ability for a user to send their monitor back in to you guys. As long as they pay shipping, you'll do that recalibration free of charge, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Which everybody's come to love.
Yeah.
Now, you have a new program with the 65-inch, right? This is a big monitor.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little awkward for people to take down off the wall or wherever they put it, pack it back up in the box. It's going to be a lot to get it to them. You have a new calibration program that you're rolling out specifically for these monitors.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So exclusive to customers who have purchased the XM650U, what we'll do for you is once per year, you can get free of charge. We'll pay to ship the probe back and forth. We'll pay the shipping. We will ship you a CR100 from Colorimetry Research, a very high-end, very stable, very accurate colorimeter. And we're not just shipping you the probe and saying good luck. You actually get the probe, but before we ship the probe, every time before we ship the probe, we will recalibrate the probe with display-specific matrices determined from a $15,000 CR300 2 nanometer spectroradiometer. So one of the most precise instruments we can get our hands on. Every single time before we ship it, that probe will be recalibrated.
So I know without a shadow of a doubt, when I get that meter, it's already been set up for this display technology.
Exactly.
And it's been reprofiled with a top-end reference,
as good as it gets,
piece of gear. So now when I use it, I'm assuming that I would still need to own Calman or Lightspace or something like that.
So one thing we don't do is we don't give you the software for free. So you still have to buy the software. Now the good news is that you can still get the FSI-specific versions of those. So you've got options that start at basically $550, for example, go up to maybe $1,000 depending on the option you want. And you install that on your computer and you use our probe. The other cool thing is that you can also, if you want, for example, you could rent Lightspace, for example, and do something like that. For customers that really don't want to buy the license or don't want to install it or bother installing it on a computer, we'll also have a program where you can rent a netbook pre-installed with software.
Wow, good idea,
but our recommendation is to have the software, use it yourself, become familiar with it. And then the great thing we'll do too is beyond the once a year free offer for the CR100 to borrow it, we also will offer discounts on additional rentals or on purchases of that gear.
Well, I think this is brilliant for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, as you know, on Mixing Light, one of our chief core tenets is kind of spread the message about some of this technology that used to be dark arts, right? You know, things like calibration. And I think it's amazing that, like, for buying this monitor, you're putting this in the power of, people's hands to learn this stuff. And I think the more conversant we all are about the process, the better stuff, the better that's going to be in general. And I think the second thing that I'm really stoked about this is that, like, I think a lot of companies would just go, oh yeah, we'll send you out a little, cheap colorimeter and put it up there. Like, no, you're sending out reference gear that's been calibrated with reference equipment. And I think that's smart because, like, you don't want there to be any questions about the accuracy of what you're doing.
So it's basically, you essentially are getting access to $20,000 worth of gear because the CR300 is going to be used beforehand, set it up, and that's like a $15,000 tool. So it gets you that level of equipment, but we also think it helps build confidence because one of the things you want is that when you recalibrate it, it's nice to send it in, but it's also great to be able to see it happen yourself, look at it. One thing that we'll do for you as well is we will help, our support team will help guide you through the workflow, guide you through the calibration like we do for any client. We'll also guide you through making your own version of, if you send a monitor into us, you'll get it back with a calibration certificate. So what we'll do is we'll give you that same workflow to where you can basically print out your own calibration certificate.
And take it to your engineer or your boss or whatever and go, here you go.
So when the client comes in and has a question, right? So you just say, look, we're confident, we did the process ourselves, we know it was right, and here's a piece of paper that shows it.
We say that often here on Mixing Light, that calibration is truth, right? You need to, as the operator, you need to be able to turn around and say to your client, no, that's exactly what the image looks like. And there's no other way you can do that through.
It's all about confidence. And when the client questions it, you want to be able to say without any hesitation that no, it is correct, and you know it's correct. You've gone through the workflow, you understand it. So we think we're trying to encourage people. Part of this is obviously it's not practical to send something this big in. But the other thing is we want to encourage people to understand the process because the better you understand the process, the more confident you'll be going forward.
So we're recording this here at the end of January, and Bram, this is sort of a big moment in time for you, right? You're gearing up with the production of these things. When can we? I know that you've already announced pre-orders. You've gotten those. When can those folks who pre-ordered sort of start expecting their units? When do you think you're going to go into full production? That kind of thing.
Sure. So the customers who pre-ordered real early, they will probably start getting their units in a couple of weeks. The next couple of weeks here. So just have a few things that we need to finish up. Some additional units will roll out slowly in February, and then as we get into March and April, we'll see kind of mass production of these, and everybody will be able to have access to them.
And don't forget, FSI is a well-traveled company. They go to trade shows all around the world in user events. So be sure to check out this monitor, of course, at NAB, the upcoming Blackmagic Design Conference, and other places. Bram, in my time spending, with this monitor so far, looking at SDR and HDR, I'm pretty impressed, man. I think you guys have a winner on your hands.
Thanks.
And like we've always said here on Mixing Light, the one thing that separates FSI from a lot of other companies out there is this guy and all of the other folks just like him that work at FSI. I am not blowing smoke when I say there's literally the best customer service in the business. And when you're, buying, investing in an expensive monitor like this, a reference monitor, that matters. So be sure to head over to FlandersScientific.com to learn more about the XM650U, as well as all of their monitors, other products like their Box IO LUT box, and tons of different accessories to help you with your monitoring needs. So Bram, I really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
Lugging this thing all the way up to my facility and letting us check it out. It's a beautiful monitor. I'm sure it's going to do well, and it's pretty cool, man. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For MixingLight.com, I'm Robbie Carman. Thanks for watching.